Hi, everyone. Today, I am talking with a former teacher of mine, Miss Teddi Schnurr. Hi, Teddi.
Hi, Kevin.
Welcome to the Pima Post podcast. Teddi has been with Pima Community College now as an early childhood education instructor for 15 years and holds 2 master's degrees, one in social work and another in early childhood education. Teddi, would you say that making children get a good start in life is a passion of yours?
Most definitely. In the early childhood department, our focus is to help prepare teachers who are going to be working with children from birth through age 8. And these young years are really important, so it's a critical time for us to be guiding them and just really making sure that they get that positive, good start. So yes, that is what drives my passion.
Awesome. That's great. So I had one quick also follow-up question, I think, to begin with, focusing primarily on the role of the teacher in relation to the student or child. What would you say is the primary responsibility or role that the teacher has towards the child as the idea of are they there to teach the child what to think or more on how to think? And in relation to that, where the term kindergarten comes from, saying to tender like a garden and have it grow and so one of the main things I was thinking about was the idea of once you find a reason why to live, anyhow becomes more bearable. So is it the responsibility of the teacher to help that child find a reason why?
I think that's a very great question. Yes, the teacher's role is diverse. So the teacher has a lot of different things that we hope that he or she will be doing with the children. But the goal long term is to develop a child who's healthy, who's whole, who has that ability to think, as you mentioned. And it's not about just teaching them, like you said, we're not just about teaching them the alphabet and colors and shapes and things like that. I mean, they're going to learn all those things. But our role is broader and bigger than that. We're nurturing people. We're getting these young people off to a good start with care and nurturance so they can thrive and do well as they get older. And so ultimately, that's our goal, and we do it in a variety of ways.
Exactly. Thank you. So you've then, throughout your tenure and career, probably have seen many changes in classroom curriculum. Is there more or less pressure on kids today to meet benchmarks, to meet, I don't want to just say state test requirements, because we are talking more about the early childhood education, and that doesn't come into play, I think, more until primary and secondary education precisely. So just focusing on benchmarks, do you think there's more pressure placed on children nowadays in the past or less?
I definitely think it's moved towards more. And there, in the last few years, standards have become more of a discussion in the industry, where there are national standards, state standards that are expected even at the earlier years. There are standards for infants and toddlers. And so there's certain developmental things that they are expecting that will be achieved at different stages of growth. And 30 years ago, there was no such thing as a discussion around standards. There might have been, here again, at the higher levels of education, but certainly not with young children. And so the shift has definitely taken place where that is definitely more of the discussion in the industry. And so our hope is not to get locked into standards where we're rigid in our thinking, but we try to allow them to guide us in what we should be expecting from children and not use it as a testing zone.
Okay. So then that would follow directly into my second question, or third question, as we are going along. I think that learning should encompass, like you said, the holistic version of the child, but not just the reading, writing, arithmetic, but as well as the teaching of social skills like empathy, forgiveness, acceptance, and cooperation or collaboration. Can these be taught, or does it come from an exposure to environment that manifests those qualities more organically or naturally?
Both. To put it straight, both.
Okay.
There is a lot of innate qualities that children have in these areas. We are a social being. The brain is designed to be a social organ. And so we already have some biological draw that direction where we pick up on things in our environment when we're young, and we learn those nuances just by being in relationship with those around us. And on top of that, we can help nurture and teach those skills as well. So that's our role as educators, is to provide an environment where we can enhance those skills and fine-tune them. So for example, a child who is learning social skills such as empathy, something that's very natural that people have, a young child developmentally may struggle with that because they're not quite there yet. So we provide opportunities for them to learn, how to handle themselves in a situation where there's a conflict, how to think about the other child in the conflict, and start to develop a sense of empathy as they are developmentally ready to take that on.
So more as a facilitator to that growth, and
Definitely.
foster that
Definitely.
growth. So then to jump to a different topic real quick and to follow, I would like to talk just a little bit about changes that COVID-19 has presented in relation to the early childhood setting. Would you say that the pandemic has caused problems in learning processes for the children? I'm thinking here that speech, maybe language, may have been impacted by mask wearing, along with maybe more social skills as well. It's because my nephew, who's in kindergarten right now, says that until recently, the kids in his own class needed to also wear masks on the playground when outside playing. So how has that had been a problem in social skills and et cetera?
Yes, I think we've all had our experiences with the COVID pandemic, and can imagine what it was like for the children going through this. We have seen concerns specifically around language, especially the younger the child and the more the language is developing. In order to learn language, you need to see the face. You need to watch the mouth move. I mean, language is not just words. And so there's a lot of nonverbal stuff that helps a child learn language. Well, we took that away from them when we put a mask on. So the industry was definitely seeing issues where children were behind in language. And the social skills that you mentioned is also something to not minimize. It's a very important part of learning. It's an important part of just being a person. And so when children were not even able to come to school and be in groups together, that had a huge impact. As you're mentioning, things even at young ages of anxiety and just isolation and just not having a chance to practice social skills. They need that opportunity to engage directly with others. And we can't easily duplicate that through other avenues. It really needs to happen in direct interaction, face-to-face. And so we're making up for a little bit of that at this point with children now getting back to the classroom and getting back to schools and getting masks and not having to wear them as anymore. We're making up for a little bit of lost time. But the good news is that children are fairly resilient, especially the younger they are. So our goal is to just try to help get those delays back if they experience them.
Yeah, to help bounce
exactly.
back.
Exactly.
So then, in one more follow-up to that one. So last year, kids of kindergarten age had their first introduction into a classroom setting, wearing masks and social distancing, etc. Along with that, last year's group of kids started their school experience with remote learning on computers. Do you see these as overall positive developments for improved living and learning in the 21st century?
Well, we always just want to be mindful with young children when we talk about learning is keeping in mind how they learn, and that goes back to brain development. So we just want to make sure that we're creating a learning environment that works in concert with how a young child learns. And one of the big ways that children learn is through play. They learn through hands-on experiences and manipulating things and trying things out. So whether the generation that didn't have any prior exposure prior to COVID came into the education system and that's all they knew, we still have a responsibility to those children to be sure that they get that wide range of experience in their learning. So it doesn't mean that technology or certain factors may not continue to be a part of their experience, but we have to be very thoughtful about how it is a part of the experience, because we don't want to take it and substitute it for what we know is really, truly working for children, which is play-based learning at the young ages.
Okay. So let's focus more on the students now. Then we'll get to your role as facilitating the facilitators or teaching the teachers.
Okay.
As students prepare to lead or assist in early childhood classrooms, do you think that all classroom teachers and teaching assistants need some sort of preparation in the psychology of how child development actually occurs, the psychological development of child development? In other words, a teacher or an assistant cannot just start walking into a classroom and maintain order right away, can they?
Yes. As we help teachers prepare, we focus on all that in our program. So anyone going through our early childhood studies program will get that kind of guidance and learning experience. They definitely need to understand the psychological aspect of development, because development is it's broad. It has a lot of moving parts to it, and the psychological aspect of development is one of those parts. So we definitely do teach that. We give our adult students opportunities to see it in practice with real children and real teachers in classrooms. They get to observe and reflect and do all those things to really think about what they're seeing and what does it mean, and really kind of thinking about, okay, well, how might this transfer when I get ready to teach? What would it look like when I actually need to do something with it? So we're really big in our department on making sure they get a chance to practice what they're learning, because like you said, it's very hard to walk into a classroom and just figure out what to do. Even if you've gone through schooling, you need time to practice, because people are not predictable, especially children.
Yeah. I can attest to that. So in relation to that, there's a big difference between theory and practice. Then you're saying theory is one thing, but when implemented into practice, it can always have unintended consequences, or not really what you're expecting from what was taught in the books or taught
Sure.
in the classroom. So then I would like to know, in my own experience as an early childhood education teacher, most often some type of control of the environment situation is the name of the game. In the preschool ages, teaching seldom occurs intentionally. It's more like we talked about, natural or organic. It comes from innate processes of playing, of interaction. So how can a teacher develop a child's inquisitiveness and build a bridge to a world beyond behavior?
Yeah, that's a big question. Part of what we need to do when we're working in classrooms with children is create that environment physically as well as emotionally where children can thrive. And you talked about inquisitiveness. Well, that's our job to promote that and bring that out in the child. So that comes from a lot of possible ways, but one way is by creating an environment that's interesting, that's stimulating, that has things that trigger them to think about things in a way maybe that is new. It's our job to figure out how to do that, and then to create a space that leads to lots of questions, because that's what gets kids inquisitive is, I wonder about that. What do you think about that? And we ask them questions and get them to ask questions. And those are the kind of skills that they will carry with them throughout their life if we do our job well. And that prepares them well for adulthood.
I see. Very interesting, actually. So to follow up on that, then, it's a sense of provoking the child's intellectual curiosity.
Yes.
And do you think that can be facilitated in a way where it's teacher-led or child-centered, as we talked about in our previous conversations in the classroom? Is it something that should come from the child themselves, or is it something that the teacher, like we were saying, provokes? Is it or is it a combination of the two? And how would that work exactly in school setting?
Sure. Normally, it's a combination. We will have some teacher-led processes that occur in the classroom. Most classrooms, especially with a lot of early childhood background where they understand how children work, give a lot of child-directed opportunities. So the child really is given the freedom to explore the environment, to engage with materials and learning experiences. And a good teacher can follow the lead of the child and can pick up on what the child's doing and add to it and take it further. So it is both, but the industry does like child-directed learning quite a bit because when it comes from the child, it's much more meaningful and it tends to have a bigger impact as far as retention.
Yeah, the difference between what I would say like forced or coerced learning rather than voluntary or freely associated learning.
Yes.
So then parents are under a lot of pressure, shifting to the direction now of parents, are under a lot of pressure and often use television or video games as a way to entertain the child or occupy the child at different times while the parents are busy or don't have the time or work. If technology is used in classrooms, isn't that contributing to more screen time when so many experts nowadays say less screen time is best?
We do aim for less, especially in the early years. And below the age of 2, it's not recommended at all to have screen time.
Wow, really?
In fact, we have licensing regulations that prohibit it in licensed centers because of the developmental concerns. With preschool-age children, for example, we don't want to add to that time because we know they're getting a lot of screen time outside of school. So we don't want to add to something that maybe is already leaning that direction. So the idea is, how can we bring technology into the classroom in a way where it's productive and effective, but it's not just passive use of learning time. And so that's the key. If we're going to use it, let's use it in very limited ways, limited time fashion, but for some kind of productive means.
Mm-hmm. In today's fast-paced world, information is coming in from all types of outlets, different outlets at high rates of speed, and technology is moving forward rapidly, and learning does occur through technological advances. There have been a lot of advances in classroom technology just within the last 10 to 20 years. Computer games that teach math, reading, alphabet. Is technology a good thing in the school setting, especially for the preschooler and kindergarten levels? Or are we just talking about a specific type of technology or all technology within the classroom setting? What is best?
Well, there's debate about that, so my answer may not be what somebody else might say. But ideally, we want children to learn the way that, here again, the brain is designed to learn, and that's through hands-on interactive opportunities, social ways of learning. So we want to make sure that the classroom is filled with those opportunities. Technology should be an additional tool that is brought in to accent learning, but it really should not take the place of those other ways of learning. So Ideally, we want technology to be brought into the classroom where it's helping produce something that the child's attempting to do with the learning experience. Passive games and things like that are not typically the best way to integrate information and retain it well because it's out of context. We'd rather transfer learning into contexts that are real for real life. So that's our goal when it comes to technology.
Yes. So I see that as like so. Technology as being more of artificial learning rather than natural learning, and that's what I think, touching up upon what you were saying, in a natural setting or an official setting. But
yes, we would aim for more natural ways of learning whenever possible.
Thanks, Teddy. That about wraps up our time now. It was a pleasure. My pleasure having you today so much. Thank you for your time and the information you were able to provide.
Thank you, Kevin, for the time. We appreciate it.
Thank you.